And it's now time to move into the exciting part of the session, teaching the fundamentals. It's a great opportunity for teachers to see the videos that are accessible within the program. So let's have a look at one of those now, learning how to kick.
Welcome to NAB AFL Auskick. Here are some tips on kicking. There are 4 steps required to perform a kick. Ball vertical, laces forward. Ball over your preferred leg. Drop the ball, point your toes. To learn how to kick a footy, it helps to picture the ball as a face. So, meet Mr. McFootyface. The laces are his nose, the sides are his ears, the point on top is his hair, and the point on the bottom is his chin. Now, let's kick him. Hold Mr. McFootyface loosely by the ears so that he's vertical or up and down. His chin should be facing the ground, his hair facing the sky, and his nose pointing towards your target. Move the ball slightly off centre so that it's resting over your preferred kicking leg. Step forward with your non-kicking leg and with relaxed arms, guide the ball straight down with one hand over your kicking leg. With pointed toes, kick Mr. McFootyface right on his chin with your shoelaces. Follow through with your kick to try to get him to spin backwards. Once you've learnt the basics of kicking, try taking 2 or 3 steps before kicking the ball. This will help with rhythm, momentum, distance and accuracy of your kicks. Think, step, drop, kick. And that's how you kick. So remember, the 4 steps are ball vertical, laces forward, ball over preferred leg, drop the ball, and point your toes. Good luck!
Another great video. Now, earlier in the week, I spoke with Steph Chiocci to get her wisdom on how to teach the skill of kicking. Let's hear what she had to say. So, Steph, this is the fundamentals of playing footy. What advice would you have for teaching this particular skill?
Well, this is the fun part, isn't it? This is what the kids want to be doing. They always want to be kicking. And usually, like when I'm teaching football, you start with the ground balls and the handballing, and all they want to do is kick. So this is where it gets fun. Firstly, I know we've spoken about it in the past webinars, but ball handling is really important, and hand placement on the ball. So giving the students that opportunity to explore how they want to hold the ball. And obviously we talk about the one-handed ball drop in the future, but it's okay to start with 2 hands, like any of the other skills. And I like the analogy with the ears and the face because it gives them a really good focus point. There's a really good activity you can start with once you've done some ball handling activities, is to play like a ball security game. And you can actually get the students to hold the ball how you would want to hold it when you're kicking. And you obviously demonstrate that. And you can play in a little area, and it's about trying to knock the other students' balls out of their hands. So it's a little bit of fun because obviously it's competition, but it's also getting them to hold and grip the ball how they should be doing it. And I find that's really worked well in the past. So even if it's just a little 30 seconds, you have to go around, try and knock students' balls out of their hands. Once that, just pick it up and continue on. And you get a point for every time that you knock someone else's ball out of their hands. Probably refrain from getting negative points when yours falls out. It's more about obviously getting points when you do that. So that's a good little intro activity. You would have seen on the video, a lot of the kids were holding the ball quite horizontal. It's really important that it's held vertical. And a little tip that I give with kicking is to actually over-rotate the ball. So I find that students who are over-rotated are less likely to then kick it horizontally because naturally we move the ball that way. So naturally we flick the ball up. So if you can over-rotate it and sort of have your wrists over your thumbs, I find that to be a really good teaching tip that not many people talk about. So starting with that, so you got your hand placement, over-rotate it, and kicking the ball to yourself first, which is a little bit harder than it seems. And that's obviously not pointing your toe. That's more so pointing your toe up, which is probably a bit contradictory to the actual skill itself, but it's a really good starting point for ball drop. So holding it over your dominant leg, placement, and then watching the ball hit your foot and then trying to get it spinning the right way. Then you can obviously progress to that step, lowering the ball and kicking the ball by pointing your toe, which is probably one of the toughest skill components of that skill. Kicking in partners is always a good progression, especially at that sort of upper primary school level. Obviously, that's a big part of our game. So to actually kick and hit a target is a progression. And there's a good little activity that can be done with that, where probably stand about 5 meters apart to start with. So a real controlled environment there. And every time that there's a kick and a mark, students can take 3 steps back. So obviously that adds that competition element. It's a little bit of a challenge. If there's a dropped mark or the ball doesn't hit the target, take 1 step in. So yes, it's coming back in, but it's not going all the way back in. So there's still that element of they're actually getting some distance on their kick. And I find that activity is really beneficial. Some things to look out for is obviously holding the ball incorrectly. The laces at the front is a really good cue for students because it's quite obvious where they sit, and throwing the ball when they kick it. So the biggest point for that would be to actually watch the ball hit your foot. And keep your hands on the ball for as long as possible. As they progress, the one-handed ball drop is paramount to the skill, and it's really important that the balance arm is out to the side. And you can obviously show and demonstrate that and show them some footage of that online of some of the best kicks in the game. But yeah, a great skill and a lot of fun. And if you can master that, then you can play many, many games and have shots on goal and other different challenges.
Great. And obviously we're talking about slightly older students here today. So we're going to have an even bigger range of ability in the group. We'll have some kids who really are just learning to kick and some who've been kicking forever. How do you handle that in a classroom?
Yeah, it's important to differentiate with anything that we do. And it could be as simple as having stations and having sort of like a bit of a tabloid going on with different skills. And, use your judgment and your assessment to group students in maybe their ability groups. You don't have to make it too obvious, but you're always going to have a wide range of abilities. So if, you have your beginners, it's not so autonomous for them, to those that are thinking more associatively with it, and then your autonomous group, and you can just have them working together and working off each other. You can also have the more experienced students working with the students that are beginning, and sort of displaying how they do it, and sort of peer teaching, which is a big part of the curriculum as well, where they get to work with others, and just obviously that feedback, that instinctive feedback and that direct feedback at the time is really important, but definitely setting them up for success is important, and you can always progress them through different levels after that.
Great suggestions. And then I guess the extension of this is getting the ball to rotate backwards,
yeah.
Which is something that some kids will be ready for, but maybe some teachers aren't quite ready for how to teach that. Is there any tips from you on how we can coach them to kick the ball with that backwards rotation?
Yeah, it's a good question, because that's probably the part of the skill that is most difficult, along with pointing the toe and getting it to hit a target and not be too loopy. The activity whereby they kick the ball to themselves will encourage that backward spin, and that over rotation of the hands. I can't stress that enough, especially in the beginning stages. That will naturally help the ball rotate the way it should. Similar to the handballing activity we spoke about previously, if you're kicking the ball to yourself and catching it, obviously it's getting the hand motion ready, but it's also encouraging that backspin, and then doing little claps to catch. That's always a good little progression there. You can obviously use a different ball. Whilst a soccer ball obviously is round, it can still spin backwards, so that's probably a good starting point as well for some people. But just reiterating to the students that, why do we want the ball to spin backwards, and sort of having a focus area on that. And the reason is it's easy to catch and it's easier to kick. So I often say, why do we want the ball to spin this way, not like this, and get them to sort of critically think about that. And then just let them have that free play. Let them go and do their thing and experiment with the ball drop and things like that, and really encourage that backward spin.
Indeed, some great ideas. And we have live with us today, Sam McKenzie, and Sam's going to share his insights into this critical skill. So welcome, Sam. Great to have you here. And
thank you.
We've seen a great video. We've heard from Steph. I wonder if you could perhaps go in a little bit further into the smaller breakdown of steps that might be needed in this process. So, you know, do we encourage kids to step and drop, ball hit the ground? What are the tips? What breakdown do you recommend?
Yeah, probably just to start with, I think kicking, there are a lot of different ways that people kind of think about how you might coach kicking. Like there's a lot of stuff out there, and certainly there's no one right way or wrong way, and there's never any sort of a wrong drill or a wrong activity or anything like that, because it's all dependent on what you're trying to achieve and what the learning outcome is, as I'm sure the teachers out there will know from, you know, creating lessons and what they do. I guess firstly, just to give a bit of an idea for myself, like the way I look at teaching kicking is that you're trying to teach kicking as a fully rounded skill. So people might say, oh, you know, there's drop punts and snaps and bananas and dribble kicks and all of this sort of stuff, torpedoes. I sort of look at it as though there's kicking, which is just striking the ball with your foot, and kicking from hand. So dropping the ball from your hand onto your foot. And rather than breaking it down into all those ones, you're actually just trying to teach players how to get the ball where they want it to go to with their foot. So that's just kind of like a bit of an idea to start with. So I don't necessarily think about it breaking it down into the different types of things you're going to do. It's actually just teaching them what happens when you kick the ball this way, or what happens if the ball's slightly tilted. Where does it go? What part of your foot do you need to hit it with? Does that change when you're trying to bend the ball around a corner compared to when you're trying to kick in a straight line, or you're trying to pass the ball or trying to get it as far as you can go? So when you're sort of when you then go to break down the steps that you're going to use to help, the way I sort of think about it is that, I mean, anything can go, because you're just trying to help the kids explore and figure out what they're trying to do. The two kind of key things, the ball drop and where the ball meets the foot, is actually probably the one and most important thing that you've got, really, because it's all about the impact point of the foot. And so the ball, your hand and your ball drop helps you get the ball to your foot where it needs to be. So like I know the old step and drop, which is very sort of traditionally drop punt focused, because you hold the ball straight, you drop it down. If your kids are really, really struggling with dropping the ball straight, then yeah, that can be a really good activity. So I'm sort of loath to say that anything's bad, but I guess for me, the way in which I would go about teaching the skill is that ball striking the foot is kind of the most important thing. So how about we start there? And so even with like really little kids, like I know we're sort of talking about older kids today, but even little kids, I mean, just starting with, can you just kick the ball off the ground? Like starting with that, because really the skill is striking the ball with your foot. So can you do that? And then we'll add in some of the complexity that comes with dropping the ball from your hand. I'm sure I've done a lot of coaching with 6 and 7-year-olds, and there's nothing quite like waiting for the kids. Sort of, you can almost see their brain ticking over. How do I get this ball here onto my foot down here and swing it to get it over there? And they kind of go like this for a little bit. And so, you know, there's some added complexity there. And so really you're just trying to encourage them just to start off with, well, let's just get impact point on the foot with the ball dropping out of your hands, and then let's go from there and figure out what we need to do and what you're trying to achieve. So the first part is, I guess I would just encourage making sure that there's ball on foot, and if you've got that, then you might start layering in some of the other things depending on what the kids need and their struggle might be. So it might be kicking the ball with a bit of backspin. So how do we go about teaching that? It might be trying to get distance, and we'll use the term penetration. So trying to get it going hard and fast forwards. So what are we going to do to help you do that. So there's sort of some of the things that you might look for. And I'm sure as we kind of chat through some of these other things we'll discuss, we'll kind of start giving you some examples for those sort of things, what we might do, or you might look for as a coach or teacher to help them out.
Yeah, I really love this approach, Sam, because it's not about having a textbook kick from the start.
No.
It's about exploring what happens to the ball when it hits my foot. And I love the use of the free play and exploration in that.
Yeah, and I mean, if you took like say AFL or AFLW players, if you took a cross section of them, they do not kick the same. You know, there are some fundamental things that help you to achieve certain types of kicks. There are some sort of commonalities, but all of the players kick differently, and they've sort of figured out what works for them. So they've had to explore that as well and figure out what can help them to be an expert kick and an elite kick of the footy. So there is no one perfect model, and their exploration allows. Like I look at someone like Eddie Betts. So I love watching Eddie Betts play, and he can do things with the footy that are like absolutely magic. But he will have explored. You know, I can't speak for how he learnt the game, but my assumption would be that there was a lot of exploration and down at footy ovals trying to bend the ball around different things, which allowed him at the elite level now to be able to get the ball, and he's so comfortable with where the ball is, and he instinctively will know, I just put the ball there and I kick it. I think he won't even really think about it, because he's had so much exploration to figure out. He understands the footy, an oval footy, which is an awkward thing to kick. He really understands all the different angles that you can kick without actually having to think about it. And that's what we want, to allow the kids to kind of figure out and go, oh, if I bend the ball like this and I kick it, it spins that way. That's pretty cool. Like I might do that if I'm in a pocket down here in a game. So yeah, that exploration, especially for kicking, I think is really, really important.
And of course it arms the kids for when they're playing a game and
Yes.
it's not predictable where the ball is going to be going and which way they're facing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So,
and we sometimes do train it thinking that it is predictable, but it's not. And so you actually, to give your kids the best chance, and we're talking probably a little bit older here, but to give your kids the best chance in a game, you actually need to set them up to be able to achieve whatever they need to achieve, whatever the situation arises. So we kind of want them to be able to manipulate the skill so that they can get the ball where it needs to be at the right time.
Yeah. And so I see this free play and exploration as a little bit of a formative assessment moment for teachers to be observing watching what's happening and seeing those kind of errors, I suppose, that a number of students are making, and then turn that into a teachable moment. And I guess one of the things that we see a lot with primary school students, particularly those who haven't had much football experience, is the throwing up the ball before they kick it. And I guess hearing, they take that time that you were just mentioning about their head trying to make it work, and maybe they think by throwing it up they're giving themselves some more time, but it doesn't work like that. How do we deal with kids who are throwing the ball right up before they
so I really love challenges. So like the way I look at skill is because I guess we don't take a perfect model approach. There's sort of not really one way to do it. So I really like challenges. So for example, for a kid who might be throwing the ball up, one thing, if you throw the ball up, you're going to struggle on a couple of things. So one is kicking the ball like with a bit of backspin on it. So if you're trying to do what would be like a traditional drop punt, which is a really effective kick for accuracy. And so, we pass the ball with it, we shoot at goal from set shots with a drop punt that spins backwards, because it's much more accurate than some of the other types of kicks that you'll use. What you might go is, okay, well, if you're spinning the ball up, we can't see that. So like Steph was talking about, well, why don't you kick the ball to yourself? So I just want you to kick the ball, because by kicking the ball to yourself, so if you go to kick it up, the ball will spin. But if you throw it up, it's actually really hard to then get your foot to the right point to go up. So the challenge for them is I want you to kick the ball up and then catch it. And that might be a really simple challenge for them. So you're not telling them, hey, you must hold the ball exactly like this and sort of put it on your foot. You're just giving them a challenge, and then you as the teacher, your role is that guided discovery to go, oh, well, what happens if you throw it up? Oh, well, the ball spins around when I throw it up, which means I can't get the bottom of the ball, which is where I need to kick it to get that spin so it stays here. Yeah, that's a really, okay, so how can you not throw it up? What can you do? Another challenge might be trying to get them to kick under something. You might get a couple of poles and put a bit of rope between it or a bit of string, and you say, all right, I want you to kick the ball under that rope. Now, if you throw the ball up, typically what will happen is you throw the ball up when you go to swing your leg through. So if this was my leg, you throw it up and your leg meets the ball here. And so you end up kicking it really high. So you end up getting really high loopy kicks as well. So just by the challenge of, okay, now I need you to lower and I want you to kick it flatter, they'll have to start instinctively. Most kids will realize after a few goes of not getting it right that they have to maybe get over their kick a little bit more. They need to drop the ball closer to the ground, which allows them to hit the ball lower to the ground, which keeps it flatter. So there's some challenges that allow you to kind of, they're like the constraints, the constraints sort of approach. They allow us to then work on some of the things that we're seeing, but it also means you don't really have to be an expert in kicking, because you can sort of see, you can have a few challenges up your sleeve or in your back pocket that you can use, where if you're seeing a few things like, oh, that's a loopy kick. Okay, well, actually one thing I can do is I might get them to kick it to themselves, or I might get them to kick under a rope, or they're not, this child doesn't really get any backspin, so I'll get them to kick it to themselves, or another one for that one is to try and be really close to some form of a crossbar or anything, and you kick it up and try and get it to kick up and over, because you end up getting to do that, you have to have quite a bit of backspin. So they're little challenges that you can create, and you can be as creative as a teacher as you want, thinking in it. It's really just like a teaching thought process. What's the problem that I'm seeing? Oh, they're doing this. Okay, so what's a way that I can get them or encourage them to do it in a different way? And you put the constraints around them and then let them go and let them figure out for them what's the best way to solve that problem.
Yeah, terrific.